Hi folks, this is All the Fruit. I am on the beautiful island of La Gomera, a place of truly otherworldly beauty. And I'm here in the south of La Gomera, in a gigantic desert. If you look around, there is no single tree to be seen, not a single tree, not a palm, not an olive, not a carob or fig tree, not even cacti or agave. Everywhere on the Canary Islands where I went, even in the most desert-like deserts, you could find a couple relics of cultivation, especially the species I just mentioned. Also almonds at the slightly higher elevations. But here nothing. Oh, wait, I'm lying. On the horizon there are two tall palms right in front of those two abandoned farmhouses there. Oh, I'm such a liar. I started the video and then I saw the two palms. Well, anyway, if you look to the horizon, we have just two palm trees everywhere around us. Two palm trees. Oh, and I'm lying again. Over there about 15 kilometers from me, on the mountain slopes, I see a couple very distant pines. But oh, okay. Apart from two palm trees, which are about 4 kilometers away, and a couple pines about 15 kilometers away, this area is completely treeless. I mean, okay, in the Australian outback or even in the American Southwest, we have such places. But it's crazy to find such a place in the European Union. And what else do we have here? Well, no humans. The only sounds are seagulls and me. In the distance, the Teide on the island of Tenerife. Behind me, well, I don't know if the island of El Hierro would be visible, but here basically the only thing I see is desert. And you might say, wait, there are shrubs and it's quite greenish brownish. However, we are in February. You can see such countrysides, for example, in the Mediterranean or southeastern Europe in July and August. But it's February. And actually the Canary Islands have had more rain than they had in years. And even places which are usually desert and which have been desert for the last couple years are very green. But this year, nope, it's kind of brownish. Even the little greenery that came up is already drying up. As you can see, most of the herbs are already red, white or brown. And the small desert shrubs, they're also not doing very well. While life is exploding everywhere on the Canary Islands, here even on the heavy rains, which cannot have been that heavy here, it is, yeah, kind of subdued already after a couple weeks of drought. And what signs of human habitation do we see here? Well, there is a power line connecting the very rare settlements here. And also there are some houses. Look here, there is a house where I have my big backpack. And over there on the next slope there is another house. And up there where the palms are, there are two other houses. And in front of the palms another. So 5 houses, 5 farms, 5 homesteads on I don't know how many square kilometers. But what else do we see? If you look around, there are terraces everywhere. And for the last hour or so I've been walking among terraces. And now I arrived at a slope which is very special for me. Because if you look up this slope to the place where those yellow mustard flowers dye the mountain in yellow, this is a slope I searched out specifically on Google Earth because of the agricultural terraces here. I guess it's one of the few slopes in the world where you can find 1,000 agricultural terraces, one above the other. Let me walk here. Look, we have like 5 meters or 15 feet of field, and then we have a rubble wall. Of course, all those rubble walls are already kind of derelict. Actually, a lot of them are still standing, but here in this area, the closest ones are derelict. But look at that. If you start counting from down there, just a couple 100 meters beneath me, and walk up here and count, and you walk up on the same slope, it's an uninterrupted, basically staircase of 1,000 agricultural terraces. I counted them about 10 years ago on Google, so folks, if you want to check if my count is correct, this valley here, the closest valley, is Barranco de la Vasca, not Vaca but Vasca, and the beach down there, which I've never seen, is Playa de Suarez. You can check it out on Google Earth. Please do it and write in the comments if you manage to count to 1,000 agricultural terraces. There are a couple areas a little bit further west where you also have about 1,000 agricultural terraces on one single slope. But this is the one with the least signs of human habitation. More in the west you can see some villages and the airport and even some tourist resorts. But here this area, if it wasn't for the modern power line, it would be a completely abandoned and deserted area. Why is it abandoned? I mean, why do you build 1,000 agricultural terraces and then just walk away from them? And what did they grow here? Well, they used to grow some wine in such areas in the 17th and 18th century, but I kind of doubt that it was so popular growing it here in those desert-like areas. In the 20th century they were growing grains, and before that in the 19th century they were growing cacti for the cochineal lice, for the red dye. But as you can see, not even a single cactus or agave survived. The desert here is so harsh, and this is not a rare thing in the deserts of Spain. They are so harsh that even cacti and agave once planted here will die without irrigation and care. So yeah, probably at the start of the 19th century they planted grains here. Throughout the 19th century, for about 80 years, they would have planted everything with cacti, from sea level to the highest terraces over 1,000 meters elevation. And then when the cochineal market collapsed because of the synthetic aniline dyes, they would have grown grains again. But look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 homesteads in this giant countryside. Of course, look at that. They are pretty small houses, 3 rooms, and those were the rooms for the people and the goats, and probably even the donkeys. So those few people, they cannot have built 1,000 terraces on this slope alone. I mean, on this slope, I see only one farm. They cannot have built 1,000 terraces. The other farms, they farmed the other slope. So how did it work here? Well, actually, La Gomera, like some other Canary Islands, were a place of quite a strange migration. The people lived predominantly in villages on the northern coast, or also the west and east coast. The biggest villages on the northern coast were Hermigo and Valle Hermoso. On the east coast, San Sebastian. On the west coast, Valle Gran Rey. But they would come to the southern slopes of the island to grow grains. So they would stay here for a couple weeks, harvest the grains, plow the land, sow new grains, or they would harvest the cacti in the area where there was a good cochineal market. And yeah, then they would basically go back to the north, because here in the scorching deserts, well, only gringos and donkeys walk in the sun, and only crazy European tourists like the southern slopes of the islands. And why did those people do this? Why did they go through all this trouble walking over those mountains, which are over a mile high, coming here to the south, traveling for a couple days to arrive in the south, and then growing grains in the desert or cacti? Well, they had no choice. Spain was a dictatorship until very recently, until the 1980s, a fascist dictatorship. Before that, it was a quite an autocratic monarchy. In between, there were a couple decades of kind of a republic, but still quite poor times. And during most of this time, people were forced to come here. Yeah, it doesn't matter that you live in the desert. Doesn't matter that we force you to farm a desert. You have to pay your taxes. If you starve, you have to pay your taxes. If your family dies, you have to pay your taxes. If there is a drought of several years and you cannot grow anything, you have to pay your taxes. You paid your taxes in lice from the cacti, in grains, in almonds. Probably they grew some almonds here also on the higher elevations, and maybe even some other fruit like figs and dates and so. But yeah, basically people were forced to farm those areas in the desert. A lot of them actually would go on tiny fishing boats, several families on a fishing boat 7 meters long or like 20 feet long, and cross the Atlantic. It is estimated that about 2/3 of those fishing boats never made it to America. But the ones who did, they lived in a much better world in countries like Cuba and Venezuela, which nowadays are considered, well, fifth world countries by some people, but back then they were paradise for those Europeans here. It's really amazing. I'm really humbled to be on this slope, to look up there. Of course, from here I cannot see 1,000 agricultural terraces, but I can see hundreds. And I know from the aerial photograph that there are about 1,000. So folks, if you want to do me a big service, go to Google Earth or Google Maps, go to the island of La Gomera, to the aerial photograph of the island of La Gomera, to the Barranco de la Vasca, which starts from Playa de Suarez, and count the agricultural terraces on this one single slope west of the Barranco de la Vasca. And tell me, are there 1,000, not 100, but 1,000 of those terraces, one above the other? I would really like to know if I really counted them correctly about 10 years ago. For 10 years I've been like edging to come here to see this. I mean, yeah, the pyramids are impressive for the temples in Rome, but this is 1 kilometer of elevation, like over half a mile of elevation of continuously terraced slopes. I thought I would see something like this only in the Andes or in the Himalaya, but here I'm seeing it on a tiny island, which is basically in Europe. So folks, please tell me, is my count correct? Are there 1,000 agricultural terraces here? I'm really sorry that I told you that there are no trees in this video, but then in the horizon I saw 2 palms. Actually, I'm sure that you wouldn't have seen them if I hadn't told you. But anyways, apart from that, stay tuned for a lot more fruit videos from the incredibly beautiful, otherworldly island of La Gomera. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe.